Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. I'm your host, Andrew Silver. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my dog Bandit sleeping behind me. He's tired. It's late. Well, it's not late. It's 7 o'clock p.m. We're shotgunning this episode because this morning I woke up and I walked out to my couch in my underwear, I might add, and opened my phone, checked a couple apps, one of which was LinkedIn. And I saw a post by one Brooks McMahon, Vice President of Emerging Products and Business Development at Uber Freight. And his post was about the latest and greatest tool that they are now offering to brokers, and it's called Broker Access. And essentially, what this tool is a way for brokers to access Uber Freight's capacity that they've developed over the last 7 years with their own brokerage. And with Transplace's brokerage and Transplace's managed trans business. So with all of those, they've developed a large capacity pool. And they're saying, hey, why not offer it to brokers? And I think I understand the idea of wanting to leverage every part of your business, every resource you have to make as much money as you can. Well, I don't think making money has ever been their MO, but I understand the thought process of saying, we have all this capacity, why not open it up to our competitors? Even though they don't want to call them their competitors. I think this article, I think you should read the article. I think you should check out the video and learn as much as you can about broker access and make your own opinion on the tool. As I sat there in my underwear this morning, I read what Uber announced and I thought, this is ridiculous. If I'm being honest, that was probably the first word I thought of. This is double brokering or co-brokering, whichever one you want to use. It's the same thing in my mind. I think it's ludicrous. This is a separate point that I want to talk about for a minute. So as I sat there, I typed out my own post and I condemned the concept. And I didn't mean to light the fire that I did. I guess, I should have known that was a possibility with what I was doing. But, I did make a commitment to myself to be less inflammatory on LinkedIn a while ago and to stop engaging with people who I thought were just engagement farming and just posting shit to post shit. I try to use LinkedIn to add value, to, provide insight based on my experience, my opinions on what's going on in the industry. I've tried to use it to help people understand who I am and what it would be like to do business with me. Because that's what I think LinkedIn is for business. It's for connecting with people in business. And I did tell myself I would try to avoid inflammatory posts, controversial stuff. And, I broke that rule this morning. I kind of feel bad about it. A little bit. I didn't mean to rain on Brooks' parade. I mean, I did. I know I did rain on his parade. I didn't mean to rain on his. I can't say that. I can't. I mean, I did. Forget it. Let me move on. I think my opinion is valid. I think that this is a tool designed for brokers to source capacity. And if Uber was simply a software as a service solution, capacity as a service solution, if that was their core business, this would be a wonderful tool. In fact, I think they should make it their core business. I think DAT is, no offense to DAT, but I think it's the most disruptable opportunity in the industry. I just think they have not really had their foot on the gas pedal for the last decade. It's kind of just we're coasting because nobody has done anything better. Nobody has been able to get better access or build a better network of brokers and carriers to participate with. Now, there's a concept. Shippers hate knowing that brokers use the DAT. And I actually think that hatred is a little misplaced to an extent. Actually, I think it just needs context. And the right way to say it is, if you read Brooks' article, he makes comments about how essentially brokers should use every tool available to them to procure capacity. And that's what this is. It's a new tool. They have, in his words, they have tens of thousands of carriers, a lot of really good owner-operators, small carriers. That's kind of how they built their network. Convoy was very similar with the the smaller carriers, owner-operators. And he's basically saying, hey, if you've got a carrier team, let them focus on mid-sized to bigger carriers, and we'll handle the little stuff for you. And I get what he's offering. The problem is they are a competitor. They're a direct competitor. They are a freight broker. That is where most of their revenue comes from. Not margin, because they've lost hundreds of millions of dollars building this thing. Apparently it's billions. I got a text after my post this morning with one word from someone close to this situation, and the only word they said was billions. And he was correcting me for saying that they had burned through hundreds of millions. He said it's actually billions. Regardless, the point is, it's a shit ton of money they've spent to build this massive freight organization. I should probably have prefaced this by saying, much to, well, whether or not you want to believe me, I am not an Uber hater to my core. That is not what I am. This is maybe the third time that I've said something negative about Uber. Maybe it's fourth or fifth. It's happened more than it has with any other company. That is a fact. But I believe every negative comment I've made about Uber was fair. I also think it's my job as a podcaster. Did I say podcaster? Whatever. As a podcast host, podcaster, I guess I can be as jaded as I want. It's my show. I can do whatever the hell I want. But that's not what I want. I want to be honest. I want to be fair. I want to let companies come on here and tell me about what they're doing and share with the audience what they're doing. And I want to poke holes in things that I think are not truthful, or but I also would like to do it in a respectful way. And I my only concern is I feel like I wasn't super respectful on how I posted about Uber today. And I think that's where I seem jaded. And maybe I am a little, but I'm not. It's largely because I feel like there's been deception at points. And I think this is a deceptive practice. There's nothing. This article that has been written is really well written with respect to all the benefits of this program in terms of the capacity they can offer, how to use it. It's well written. It's weird to me that there's not a single comment made about the fact that they are a competitor. Why? Like, why not address it? Be honest with us. Be transparent. That's always what has frustrated me about, it's what I hated about Convoy. Convoy had incredible marketing, which is why I'm not surprised this coming from Convoy that this is packaged how it is. You know, the first few sentences of this article are, if you're in logistics, you know, transformation is constant, evolution is a must, resilience is essential. This sounds like we're about to find out about the coolest new thing in history. Instead, we are learning about a tool that is double brokering. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Well, the ifs, ands, or buts are on the definition of double brokering. So let's talk about that for a second. People have argued today in my, I made my inflammatory post and it got 100 comments, literally. And a lot of the comments, some of them, are about the notion of what is double brokering versus co-brokering. And the argument is that double brokering is when you give a broker gives a load to a carrier, and that carrier brokers the load without authority. Thus, it's illegal. And their argument then is that co-brokering is when there's a contract between two different brokers who agree to broker the freight twice. Sure, let that be the delineation. They're both fucking wrong. I shouldn't have sworn. They're both very morally wrong. They are. I'm sorry. How many of for those of you that are co-brokering today, how many of your shippers know that you're co-brokering? Because most shipper broker agreements are very explicit about the fact that you cannot rebroker the load. Brokers have always had a bad reputation. And that's what pisses me off about the marketing tactics we've seen over time from the freight tech companies who, position themselves as one thing when it's really another, or just deceptive tactics. One of the times I got upset about Uber is when they announced free quick pay for all their carriers. And this is how they started the business. Free quick pay for all carriers. That's a great offering to a carrier. But the intent was never to keep it free forever. It was just to suck in the capacity, get them locked in, and then now it costs, I think, 2% to get paid in 2 days before you get paid for free in like an hour. That never was going to work. It never was going to scale. It's bait and switch tactics. Like, that's what it is. And it's hard not to see that and be frustrated and feel like when these carriers are pissed at me as a broker, it's because of stuff like that. A few years ago, when I'm still at Smolo, I did a company-wide meeting and I asked one of my old owner-operator carriers to come onto the company-wide meeting and just have a conversation with me in front of my company. I wanted to expose, not all of our people are carrier reps, so I wanted them to just get a feel for what it's like to work with an owner-op. It was a guy named Peter Achukwu and his wife, Catherine. They were from Nigeria, and they had migrated to the Atlanta area, and Peter was a driver and his wife Catherine was the dispatcher. And we did a lot of loads together, probably 20 loads a day. 20 loads a month, which is about the maximum you could probably do with an owner op, unless it's all like local stuff. You could do multiple in a day. And there was never like a question of if he would take the loads. I mean, it was usually like I'd give him the loads for the week and he would take them, but like we negotiate rates and all that stuff. It was fine. But almost never did he take a load from anyone else. And I asked him on this company-wide meeting, why did we have such a good relationship? Why did it work between you and I? And he said, because you were always honest. And what I mean by that is you would call me and tell me that you had a Coke load picking up in Atlanta at a facility that is not easy to work with, especially if you're late. You wouldn't tell me it was open hours from 8 to midnight. You would tell me you already missed the appointment, as in our company had missed the appointment, and we needed you to go be a working, and it was probably going to be a while, and it was not going to be a fun experience. But we'd get you an extra couple $100, $150, whatever it was, and does that work? And he was like, I just appreciated that you never tried oh yeah, it's first come, first serve, just to get me to take the load and show up at the facility, and then I'm stuck there, so I might as well take the load, even though you lied to me about the intent on the way. That is how you have good relationships with anyone in the industry on any side. You're just honest. You understand that there's hard stuff in our space, but like the reason that we have such negative connotations for freight brokers is because of behavior that is deceptive in nature. It's that simple. So the challenge to me is, will Uber come out and say to all their shippers, like, hey, we're doing this with each of these brokers. Here are the brokers we're doing it with. Will the brokers who are going to sign up for this, will they tell their shippers, hey, I'm tendering the loads you give me to Uber. They are my capacity tool. If the answer is no, if a broker won't do that, then this is a bad tool. And we all know that. Like, this was not built. Tell me I'm wrong. So I'm going to rant, and then if you tell me I'm wrong, I'll put my thumb in my mouth and shut the hell up. But the reality is, brokers aren't going to admit that. They never will, because they'll lose the business, because it's unacceptable. Shippers do not want brokers procuring capacity from other brokers. It's that simple. So I think if Uber wants to figure this out, they should get rid of their brokerage. It's never made $1. It's never even come close. It's lost so much money. It has, for better or worse, no, I don't need to say that, but it has never made money. Uber has incredible people, some of the smartest in the industry. I wouldn't be surprised if Leo or Ron was one of the smartest CEOs in the industry, most intelligent. But this isn't working in totality, and you can't play both sides. So Flexport, which bought Convoy's old brokerage technology, is in a similar dilemma, but it is different. And I know it's different because I have friends at all of these companies, some of which I talk to. I have guys at Uber and Flexport that I talk to every day. And they've asked me about this before. And, as I talked to the individual who oversees this from Flexport, it was a very intense conversation around, like, should they or shouldn't they be selling to shippers while also selling to brokers? And he was adamant, we shouldn't be selling to shippers and brokers. That's where it gets wrong. If this is purely a tool for brokers, it's an innovative new solution. It's weird how you got there because you had to, in Convoy spent $1 billion to develop a capacity network that can now be a standalone load board. That's, wonderful for Flexport because they spent less than 1% of that, I would guess, because they bought it for scraps. But they now have a meaningful tool that I think could work. I don't know if the cost makes sense. I haven't looked at the cost. My understanding for these companies is at least $25 a load, but as much as 50, 70, 80, $90 a load. There's not enough margin for us to be sharing it three ways. What's going to end up happening is carriers are going to get less money. I mean, it's just that simple. We have how many hands can there be in the cookie jar? The carrier's got his hand here. The broker's got his hand here. And I don't have a third hand for Uber to put theirs in. But that's what's happening. And I think to pass this off as just another resource is underhanding. It's underhanded. It is. It's it doesn't sit well with me, but clearly, I've tried to have Uber on the show, and I hope they will come on the show. I could see why they maybe wouldn't after this, but I think I would love to learn more about all the things Uber's doing, and I've given credit to Uber a number of times. In my episode with Rob Haddock, we talked about how Uber created facility ratings, which is similar to how, if you get an Uber and your driver does a good job, you give them 5 stars and you can give feedback. Uber applied that concept to freight, and they were the first to ever do it. And they did it in a way that's super efficient and effective. Great. That's awesome. And they should sell that. They should sell that to get opportunities with customers is what I mean by they should sell that. Because it makes their business better. It makes their shipper partners' business better. It's good feedback. I had Alyssa Coriale on the show. She was incredible. I loved getting to chat with her. She was, I didn't bring her on because she worked at Uber. I brought her on because she's a fascinating person. And we had a great conversation. We talked about Uber a lot. We talked about Power Loop, and that could also be a great tool, great resource for their customers. And I've engaged with Uber's marketing team. I spent the summer trying to get them to agree to bring someone on the show. And, I wanted an in-depth understanding of their business. I wanted to come to the Uber office, sit with their team, see the whole thing, and then have a conversation on the record about what they're building. I think they're one of the more fascinating organizations in our space, for better or worse. I don't know the answer yet. If the thing never makes $1 and then gets sold off for, pennies on the dollar, then it was a massive waste of time. Unless some of the tools live on, like in Convoy's sake. I mean, there certainly are. There's a tremendous fallout in a good way of Convoy talent that has gone off to do new things in the last year. Look at Rylan Hawkins working with my brother at Cargado. They're building something special over there. That's a true load board. That's what Uber should do. You've got tens of thousands of carriers. Give up the brokerage. It ain't working. Be a managed transportation company. Be a load board organization. Be Yelp for freight. Create a Yelp tool through your Uber ratings. But stop trying to broker freight. Be agnostic. If you do that, everyone, all these small brokers will sign up. But right now, these small brokers that are going to sign up should be scared, because if their shippers find out this is how they're doing business, I don't understand how they have longevity. I don't know if these small brokers have longevity to begin with. I mean, we're getting to a place where they're going to outsource 99% of their business. Their appointments will be scheduled by Q'd. The inbound calls will all be answered by Happy Robot or Fleetworks, and Uber will cover all the loads. So what the heck are the brokers doing? You certainly don't have any carrier reps. You don't have ops reps, or many of them. And then you have a couple salespeople. And what are you selling? You're selling everyone else's tools? What's different about you? I think capacity is something that has to stay in-house. You pull it from other places, and then you want to own it. You own it by developing really strong relationships with the carrier, by having good freight to give them as consistently as possible. And that's why you need a stellar sales team out there getting new business. And on the carrier side, you need strong people who can develop relationships all across the board. I understand it is not as effective in terms of time to work with owner-operators, but man, is it fun. If you get good ones in your network, I mean, I booked 30 loads a day, all on owner-operators. It's possible. It's doable. I should correct that. I booked 30 loads a day, and like 25 of them were on owner-operators. I had a few bigger carriers that hauled some loads a day. It's doable. And I understand people want to do more with less, but this one piece, this one slice of passing the load to another broker to procure the capacity, I think is where we cross the line. I am happy to have Leo or Ron on the show to talk about this, to talk about the entire business. I hope he'll come on. I understand why he wouldn't, but I hope he will. I think that, if the election taught us anything, it's that podcasts have power, and discourse when we disagree is a great way to understand one another better. I am not someone who can't be convinced of something. I will ditch my opinion in a minute if you can convince me that this makes sense. Like I think I would start and end on the shipper question. Is a shipper okay with this? Are most shippers going to be okay with this? Because I'm sure you'll find a few here and there who just say, I don't care, give me the lowest price. And okay, fine. There's always going to be these outliers. You've got this massive industry, and there's 100 million, there's so many different ways to do this. But, if I'm a shipper, here's how I think about this moving forward. I've always believed that shippers should be way more interested in how brokers procure capacity. And I think there's a ripe opportunity for someone like Good Shipper ISO to go deeper on their tooling that they're offering and get into like the mechanics, the makeup of a carrier network. So, you could look at the size of the carriers you use, the how often you use each carrier, your average loads per carrier, or carriers per load, whichever it is. There are a number of things you can look at that would indicate network strength. And I don't know, I think if I'm a shipper, that's the next thing that I'm going to start to evaluate. Because there's not a need for you to have 50 brokers. You should have anywhere from 3 to at most like 20 if you have a really big business. You don't need more brokers than that. But you've got to pick out of 15,000 or 20,000, whatever the hell the number is now. I know I used to say a bigger one, but I was corrected down. And in making those choices, we all sound the same, but it's going to sound a little different when people stop saying I have a really strong carrier network and say I have Uber's carrier network. But I don't think that gets you in the door. I don't. So I think there's more to come on carrier procurement. I think it's one of the most essential parts of brokering. It's literally like 50% of it. And the idea that a broker is just passing that off to another broker is so crazy to me. So, I'm sorry for maybe reiterating myself so much, but, this is my perspective, and I could easily be wrong. Prove me wrong, prove me wrong. Show me that you grow this thing and make Uber a super profitable organization that does good. takes care of carriers, is honest and open about how they're managing the business. That's what I would like to see out of the organization as it continues to, invest billions. And that's all I got. So I hope this was insightful. I hope this gave you an opportunity to see a different side of the show as we just tackle a very specific concept. Have a good one.